Hello, this is Eric Davidson.
And I'm Brandon Wood.
And this is
ProgPod.
Yeah. And this is a podcast where we talk about progressive music, which is progressive music according to our definitions, which we'll get into later. And on this episode, we're going to start off, since this is the first one, we're going to give you a little introduction. We're going to tell a bit about ourselves and our hobbies and things like that. And then we're going to talk about our descent into progressive rock.
Yeah, it's very exciting because we both got into it at similar times, as you'll hear in the coming minutes. And we both really just dove headfirst into progressive rock and progressive metal music, and we have not looked back since.
Yeah, we came into it separately, but sort of each other. You know, we influenced each other's descent, I'd say. But we both started that fall, separately, despite knowing each other for a long time and being friends for a long time. So it's kind of interesting. And after we do that segment, we're going to talk about what prog means to us, like our definitions of progressive music, and then we're going to give you our song rec of the we do a song rec of the episode at the end.
At the end, we'll always give our listeners a recommendation of a song to go listen to, and hopefully that will inspire you to go listen to the album. So I've known Eric since we were both 5 years old. We met each other through running cross country and track together.
We're in a little rec league team.
Yeah. And we ran all throughout high school together as well. And then we went to different colleges and stuff. And then eventually ended back up at the same college. So we've been friends for a super long time. And music in general is something we really share. He's the only person in like the real world that I talk to about music seriously with.
And same for me.
And it's really nice having someone to talk to prog about, because not a lot of people I meet in real life have, first off, no idea what it is, and not a lot of people are open to it in general. I graduated from College of Charleston with a degree in communications. Hobbies of mine, I like listening to music, obviously. I like viewing football and basketball. I'm really into sports. And I really like hiking a lot. And I love traveling and just like being outdoors in general. And hopefully someday I can move out to the West Coast. We're currently located in South Carolina, so kind of tough with the old hiking thing here. So that's just a little background on me. Eric?
I'm Eric. Obviously, I agree with everything he said. There are no discrepancies in our story. We met when we were like very young, did cross country for a while. I went to college at North Carolina State at first. Wasn't the biggest fan, didn't really have a great time there. So I came back to Charleston, College of Charleston, and I majored in physics and astrophysics. And I actually graduated in 2017, and I took a sort of a gap year, which turned into a gap 2 years, I guess. But I'm currently working doing astrophysics research, and I'm actually applying to graduate schools right now, or I just finished applying and waiting to hear back from some of them. And so I'm excited about that. I also really like hiking. Me and Brandon sometimes go hiking together, which is really fun. We have little excursions and other things like that. And that's basically me. Brandon is also like the only person I talk to about music. And I think it's really important because, there's kind of a gulf a lot of times between what we like and our opinions on music and like people online and everything. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, because a lot of people come at it from like a very sort of, like both of us like progressive metal, but some people who like progressive metal are like, oh, I don't like any of that soft shit, like on the internet.
And we're definitely not like that at all. We love progressive rock as well, progressive folk stuff as well.
We love like prog. We even love like a lot of prog, like tangential stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas like a lot of people on the internet are like super old school, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with being super old school, but there are some people on the internet who are like, oh, Yes is the be all end all.
Yeah.
And nothing's ever even touched that.
And we both love Yes.
We both are big fans of Yes.
But we also like modern progressive music just as much, if not more, for us. So, maybe give some people a different perspective. So now we kind of want to talk about both of our descents into progressive music, because it really is a rabbit hole once you get super, super into it. At least that's how I feel. I can't get out of it. I don't want to get out of it. I love it so much. I want to just keep exploring. So I think Eric's going to share his story first, then I'll share mine, and we'll piggyback off of each other if we have anything to add.
So when I was a kid, I mostly listened to like classic rock type music, some of which ended up being like tangential to prog, or even actually just prog. I listened to a lot of Pink Floyd when I was a kid, mostly just like their more popular stuff. I listened to Shine On You, Crazy Diamond, and like Comfortably Numb and all those kinds of songs. And I liked all that stuff. I was never into like sort of like the really popular music when I was a kid. I just always listened to that stuff. And I got into that mostly through my parents. And my parents were always like, oh, this is like the be-all, end-all. This is like super good. And I really liked all that stuff too. In high school, I went through, much to my surprise, because before that, I never thought I could be a fan of hip-hop. But I got really hardcore into rap music. Brandon will vouch.
Yeah,
I was the rap music.
Yeah, fan. It was the most underground stuff I had ever. Any song he showed me, I had no idea who the artist was at all.
And it was crazy because I would go on DJ Booth and Dat Piff and just download random people's mixtapes and listen to them and stuff and be like, this is the best shit coming out of the underground right now. It's so good. And some of them actually were. I think some of them were pretty good. But I was just really into that, and that was the first time in my life I'd say I was really super hardcore into any type of music. Because before I always loved listening to Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and those bands, and Jimi Hendrix especially. But I was never going out of my way to listen to albums and find new artists and everything. And I would when I was into hip hop, I would just spend hours and hours browsing around the internet for the latest cool stuff. And it was interesting because around my first year of university, the first couple months, my interest kind of dwindled in hip hop. And I would say I'm still a fan of some types of rap. And it's actually really interesting looking back because a lot of the artists I was really into in high school who were very underground at the time, or at least somewhat underground, actually ended up being now very popular. So it's kind of fun to see that. One of them, one of the biggest ones was Kendrick Lamar, who's now one of the top rap artists now. But at the time, he had just released. I was into him. I was introduced to him right before he released Section 80, and so he wasn't even really popular until he released his next album, Good Kid, Mad City. But it was just this crazy vibe because everyone was oh, he's gonna make it for real, and he did. Another person like that was J. Cole. Actually, he had just released his first couple mixtapes, and that was and now he's also one of those popular people. And the other one who I think is probably of those three, I think has just as much artistic merit was Big Crit. He was another one. He's a southern rapper guy, and he got pretty popular. He's not as popular as the other two.
Yeah.
But when I was in high school, I was like, Big Crit's the next thing, man. He's so cool. So. My interest kind of gradually faded in that kind of music. And honestly, to, my dismay, a little bit music in general, right? I went through a little slump my first semester of college, and I just didn't have that much time to, listen to things and go through things. And a lot of the stuff I liked before wasn't, resonating with me as much for whatever reason. And so that kind of sets the table for my descent into progressive music or whatever, and I got pushed down, the initial push down the descent or whatever, the push down the hill on my wheelie shopping cart, I don't know, was a really interesting one. I actually, my second semester of college when I was at North Carolina State, I really wanted to study abroad the following year. And one of the places I really wanted to study abroad the most was in Sweden, or Denmark, or a different, a Nordic country. But mostly Sweden was actually what I was looking forward to. And I was really gung-ho about that. I was all I was thinking about. I was just I'm going to go study abroad. It's going to be really cool. And so I spent a lot of time trying to familiarize myself with Swedish culture and things like that. So it's I want to know what it's like. I want to know what people like there. I want to relate to people, everything. And one of the main things I discovered, one of the main things I wanted to know is what do Swedish people listen to? What kind of music do they like? And it was interesting because a lot of people in Sweden really like metal, a lot more than in the U.S. And actually the Nordic countries in general, metal's a lot more popular and a lot more of a thing than it is here. And I found a list on the internet of what are the best metal bands from Sweden, because I never really listened to metal. And actually I would go as far as to say I never really listened to anything with really dark undertones, and because most hip-hop, even though it can be about intense subjects or whatever, it's kind of upbeat and happy almost, obviously not everything, but
at least from a musical perspective.
Like sonically, right? Yeah, and I mean and Pink Floyd, obviously they get like really dark, but most of the songs I had heard were the ones on the radio that are like comfortably numb. Which also that one's kind of dark too, but it's like nothing so like nothing in the realm of like metal, you know.
It's not like brooding or anything.
Yeah, or just like really like and foreboding and all that stuff. And so yeah, so I saw this list of metal bands, and I checked out a few of them, and I was instantly really turned off by harsh vocals. I was like, "What? This is insane. I don't like." And I never, and it was another actually genre where I had never thought I would like that kind of thing. But I started listening to them, and I was like, I couldn't get into the harsh vocals, so I was looking for bands that were. So it was pretty specific. I was looking for bands that were Swedish that played metal that didn't use harsh vocals, right? And so one of the bands I first found was a band called Opeth, which you probably have heard of them because they're one of the more popular progressive metal bands in the world. But if you haven't, they're a band that uses they usually mix harsh vocals and clean vocals, in different sections. They also have some albums that are purely use clean vocals. And so my first experience listening to progressive music and any type of metal was actually listen to the albums Heritage by them and Damnation, because I didn't want to listen to any of the albums that had harsh vocals, and those ones don't. But I really was kind of addicted to and enthralled with those like dark atmospheres, and I still think to this day they're my favorite band today, and I think they do a really good job of creating like foreboding, like evil sounding atmospheres. And I was so like. I was almost like scared by it, or like I was like, oh god, like what is this? The first couple of times I listened to it, because it's just so spooky sounding, right? Compared to anything I'd heard before, it was just like a little bit like, oh, what's going on? Even an album like Heritage, which is again, it's like totally clean vocals and like not really a metal album at all. It's just like, but it was just like really spooky, and especially Damnation.
Yeah, both are just like really, really creepy. And
yeah,
spooky and just like haunting
the whole way through. Yeah, so listen to them, and then another one I listened to was I listened to some Leprous, right? And they have a lot of songs that they don't use harsh vocals, especially on Cole. I listened to Cole, and I would listen to songs that didn't use harsh vocals. I did that with Opeth too, right? Because they have a lot of albums that do use harsh vocals, that have songs that don't. And so I listened to parts of Blackwater Park that didn't have. And I really love that they do a lot of like really cool finger picking stuff and a lot of that. And I really like that vibe, but in like a dark context and like, sort of like evil sounding finger picking stuff. And so I was really into that, and I would always listen to those. And I would even I'd go as far as to listen to like some of their metal songs. Like up until I would like try more and more like listen to the metal songs. Then when it started doing harsh vocals, I'd be like nope, I'm gonna nope out of here.
You do that with the song Blackwater Park.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah,
like the first like 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, when it goes like yeah, like oh no, I would turn it off. Yeah, so I do that over and over again, and I gradually started to like love that band like so much, and like even I can even point to like some specific songs that I think got me into like that they made. That got me into progressive rock and metal, which like one of is like In My Time of Need. It's like such a like dark song, and really progressive and cool. And Window Pane was another one on the same album. Those are both from Damnation. Actually, they're the first two songs on Damnation. And so I really love those songs, and I love the whole album. But like those were two songs that initially like drew me in, and also pretty much all of Heritage. So. That happened, and then after that, I spent a lot of time like just listening to them and Leprous. But I kind of gradually branched out because, through Opeth, I discovered Steven Wilson, who, you guys, if you are into progressive rock music at all, you probably know Steven Wilson. He's probably like the single most popular guy right now.
Yeah,
like in the genre.
In the progressive rock realm, he's probably the most popular modern progressive rock artist.
For sure, yeah. And I discovered the Raven That Refused to Sing album. And that album was like awesome, and I love that. So I got into that. So I was into metal stuff, and I was gradually getting more and more into the harsh vocals and everything, and gradually being more and more accepting of that. And then I was also getting more simultaneously into the progressive stuff, and that just kind of continued. I discovered them, and I discovered another band called Beardfish, which helped me out a lot because they also like every once in a while threw in a harsh vocal or two, like very sparingly. But we're very progressive. So basically, from Opeth to Steven Wilson to Beardfish and also Leprous, that's how I started out. And then I just gradually kept listening to more and more stuff. And then at the boot. So that was like all throughout, I'd say like 2014. And I actually had the pleasure of seeing Opeth live at the end of 2014 in Atlanta. I actually went to that concert with Brandon and Dylan Blanchard, who's our other really good friend.
And I was not like, I didn't know much about Opeth's music at the time.
Yeah.
And I was actually, I had gotten into some prog already, but I was not into harsh vocals or metal yet really at all. And I really regret that because I like Opeth a lot now, and I wish I would have been like more of a fan, but it was still like a very good time at the concert. Regardless of all that.
It's really cool. And I know Brennan, that was when you were. Yeah, it was also. I mean, you will get into it in your story. Yeah, that was also like when you were getting.
Very similar time.
And throughout the next year, it was 2015. We would we spent a lot of time like we'd talk more and more about music, like increasingly.
Yeah, because we never really. I mean, we talked like very vaguely about it in high school and stuff, but not anything like deep or like. With any substance. Really.
I would just anytime I got Brandon in my car to like go anywhere, I would just like play some rap song that he'd ever heard. So
we kind of discovered we had like we were both liking a lot of the same stuff, and I didn't have anyone to talk about it besides on the internet. And we realized like, hey, we can talk about this with each other.
And so yes, that was really cool. So that was like that really like exposed me to a lot of different bands. Talking to Brandon about that kind of stuff, especially like Rush, because they're a band that like I had heard of, obviously because they're pretty popular, and I heard like some of their most popular songs, but I hadn't really like delved into their discography or anything. Anyway, so we did that for about a solid like year and a half, where we just kind of would informally talk about stuff. And then probably where like a lot of it like really took off, I'd say, is like in the summer of 2016 when we started doing this thing called like Album of the Week, which is a thing where basically every Monday I give him an album to listen to that he's never listened to, and he gives me an album to listen to that I've never listened to, and then we like at the end of usually we do it like every other week, so it's like he'll give me an album like on Monday, and then the next Monday, and I'll give him an album on the same days, and then on that Friday we'll talk about both of them the second Friday. And so that was honestly, I'd say, where it like really took off and skyrocketed. Because it's sort of like I'm hearing a lot of new albums that I wouldn't have heard before. I wouldn't have listened to anyway, because he's like giving them to me, and also it's sort of like I gotta like keep up, so I gotta like listen to a lot of shit too.
I have to do the same. I mean, I always want to listen to stuff, but having this like makes me like have to do it. Like, it's a good chore to have. Like,
exactly.
So that's it helps me as well discover new bands for him.
And I'd say that almost is like the end of my like descent, because like from there it was just kind of obvious, like, oh, I'm listening to this and this and this and like all sorts of stuff. So that's basically my like descent into progressive music.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell my story now, my descent into prog, as we're calling this little segment. So I grew up with like pretty much just whatever my parents listened to. They were super big Bruce Springsteen fans, therefore I was a super big Bruce Springsteen fan. Not so much anymore, but like that was like my like bread and butter growing up, and like a bunch of other classic rock stuff, and like some like grunge and alternative music from the 80s and 90s. Not anything ever really too like underground or anything, mostly like bands that like most people knew of, but I came up with like a rock background for sure though, as opposed to a pop music background or anything like that. There's not really been any point in my life where I've liked like bubblegum pop type stuff. That's never been a thing. Right? I've liked like popular rock music and stuff like that, but I've never been into like just like, I don't know, like people like Beyonce and Katy Perry and artists like that. So that's never really been a part of my musical journey, and I'm thankful for that. So I kind of grew up with that kind of stuff, and I think like a big thing that like instilled how I listen to music now, because I'm certainly someone who likes to enjoy a full album front to back. Is that I used to, when I was little, that's how I would like consume music. Whenever we'd drive anywhere, we just like listen to albums, and I loved the idea of listening to like a full album. I just like think that's such a magical experience. And like even when I got older and started listening to albums on my own, I would listen to the full album as opposed to songs for the most part, because it's just kind of how I grew up. So I was like kind of in like just the rock phase for like a long time, and like again, I didn't like pop music at all, and I didn't like like rap music. I really hated rap music for a really long time. I was super opposed to it.
Yeah.
I used to even say that I hated rap music more than like your bubblegum pop music.
Right.
When I was growing up, and I also went through a rap phase in high school.
Yeah.
It just seems
Is it crazy we both did that? Because I also in middle school was like, oh, I'm never gonna listen to rap.
Yeah, I hated it, and I think it was
so
the summer of 8th grade going into high school. I think I listened to an Eminem song. An Eminem song, and I'd probably heard the song before, but for some reason, I think it was "Lose Yourself." It was the most popular Eminem song. I had probably heard it before, but for some reason, it just like really clicked and it like pumped me up a lot. And I got super into Eminem, and I got into like a bunch of other rap as well. I didn't go as underground as Eric, but there was a while there in high school where like I think rap was like probably my favorite genre of music, and rock kind of like took a back seat for a little bit. I never like lost my love for rock, but it kind of just like took a back seat to rap for like a really long time. Which I didn't think would happen, and we have a very similar story with like kind of falling out with like rap or whatever, and just like kind of it not doing enough for me anymore. Which is what happened to me. I went to college at Clemson University, and I didn't finish there obviously because I graduated from C of C, and it was my second year there, September 2014. I was still listening to some rock and some rap, but I wasn't like enthralled with anything I listened to. Whatever I was listening to just wasn't like doing it for me anymore.
Yeah.
It just wasn't like stimulating me enough at all for whatever reason. I went through like a similar rut like you did, and I don't know. I was driving home from class one day, and I never have the radio on. I have no idea why I had the radio on this day, but I had the radio on for whatever reason. And the song "Free Will" by Rush played, and I had heard this song before in the past. And when I was younger, I remember not particularly liking Rush whenever I would hear those songs. But I heard this song, and it got to the part in the middle where there's just like an electrifying guitar solo and bass part, and everyone's just like going nuts in the middle of the song. And that shit just like blew me away for some reason at that very moment. And I really enjoyed that, and I went home and like immediately played it like on repeat, that particular song for a while. And I just sat in there, I played some of their other popular songs that I knew of, like Tom Sawyer, Limelight, stuff like that. And I was like enjoying those as well. I was like, this band's really good. I don't know why I didn't like them when I was younger. So I continued listening for a couple days. I just kept listening to the songs I knew or whatever on Spotify. One day I'm sitting there listening to it and I'm just digging it so much. I just go on Amazon. I went on Wikipedia first actually, and I looked at their discography, and they have 19 studio albums. And for some reason I was like, I want to listen to all of it.
Yeah.
And I just really big impulse buy. I just went on Amazon, added all of their albums to a cart, and just like purchased them. And for like the next week or so, however long it took them to come there, I was very giddy to like receive them. I just wanted to listen to them. I'm a big CD guy. I use Spotify as my main source of listening to music, but I do like a physical copy of a CD of something I really like. So they finally came in the mail, and I just started from the beginning and went all the way. And I like fell in love with like everything they had to offer. I thought it was like so impressive how they like shifted genres so many times throughout their careers, and it was like difficult listening at first for me because it was probably like the best musicianship I'd ever heard from a band I'd seriously listened to myself, and I was just like amazed with what they could do with their instruments, their lyrical content as well, and their songwriting. So I fell in love with them, and that's literally like for a good like 4 or 5 months. I don't think I listened to anything else. I would just listen to Rush. That's all I had on in my car ever. And that's all I listened to when I was at my house. And I was like just amazed by everything. So Rush is really what got me into prog. And at first I'm not even sure if I like knew that they were considered that. And I went and looked because I was curious. I was like, what genre of music is this, and how do I get more of this from other bands? And I noticed they were a progressive rock band, and I was like, I need to check out some more progressive rock bands. And I hadn't yet. I dropped out of Clemson shortly after getting into Rush in November. I remember Eric was home for...
You rushed on out of there.
Yeah, I did rush on out of there. And Eric was home for Christmas break, I believe.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. You were home, and I remember being in your old house, and we were just talking about something not related to music, and I saw the Raven that refused to sing in other stories, the vinyl. It was just sitting like on a chair, and I thought the album art was really cool, and it was pretty creepy looking too, almost.
Yeah.
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 I saw the album art, and I was like, what? Who is that or whatever? And he was like Steven Wilson, and I was like, oh, cool. I think I might listen to that just because I like the album art or whatever.
Yeah.
And I went home and researched Steven Wilson, and I found out that he was a progressive rock artist. And then I found out he has a band called Porcupine Tree before this, and I was like, well, I can't listen to Steven Wilson before I listened to his old band. And one of the reasons I wanted to listen to Porcupine Tree is because they had a cool band name. So I, from Rush, I listened to Porcupine Tree, and really Eric influenced it by having that just out randomly that day. I listened to Porcupine Tree and Steven's solo stuff, and I like absolutely fell in love with that stuff as well. So now I had a second artist to cling to in my journey, and from there I really just wanted more. I just was like, how do I find more bands like this that can give me this like euphoric feeling and like such stimulation when I listen to it. And I remember as a kid I would play Guitar Hero 4, I think it was. And the bonus song on that game was a song called Pull Me Under by Dream Theater. And it's actually funny because I actually even before Prog, I had occasionally just put that song on just to listen to sometimes because I like that song a lot. And I looked Dream Theater up because I knew they were a metal band or whatever, and it said they were progressive metal, and I was like, oh, I literally don't even think I knew that was a thing at the time. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I wasn't into metal at all. I had never really listened to metal at all in my life. But Dream Theater was like, I think, a good exposure to it. It's not. They do have some heavy songs, but it's not quite as heavy. It's always clean vocals. I think James LaBrie has a voice that not a lot of people like. I like his voice a lot personally on the other stuff, but I think it's really like they're definitely a very, very challenging listen. But like as far as a metal band goes, for like heaviness and harshness, I guess it's a little more accessible on that front, but definitely not accessible musically at all. But I listened to Dream Theater, and I remember having a hard time getting into them initially. I remember I was in my room and I was listening to Images and Words, and I got about halfway through it and I just kind of turned it off, honestly. I just like wasn't feeling it for whatever reason, and for some reason there was like the next week or so I had a song, the third song called Take the Time, which was an excellent song, stuck in my head. I was like, oh, why is that stuck in my head? I couldn't figure out what it was at first. I was like, what song is that? And then I figured out it was a Dream Theater song. And I was like, I think I need to try listening to Images and Words again. And I tried it, and it just like clicked, like immediately the whole thing just like clicked for me. And from there I just like went through their entire discography. And I absolutely fell in love with Dream Theater. There was like a point where I thought they were going to be my favorite band, because at the time Rush had taken over the helm as my favorite band of all time. And I was, for a while, I was just listening to Dream Theater, and specifically Metropolis Part 2 seems to remember me. I was listening to that album like every single day for like a month and a half straight. And I think the fourth one of these three I'm talking about, these three big ones I'm talking about, is Tool, which is a band I'd heard a few songs when I was little and didn't really enjoy it as much. But I got into them, and they took a little longer as well to get into, but I really, really got into them as well. And for a while, these four artists were like my world, and they were like the four that I like leaned on the most in Prog. And I kind of like almost like not burnt out, but there was a short period where I like wasn't looking for new stuff besides like these four.
Just like so.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why that happened, but it did. And you know, a couple of months go by and I'm just listening to these four, and then there's this band I've been hearing about on the internet, and this band is called Haken. And I put their first album on in my car, called Aquarius, and the first song, there was some harsh vocals in it, so I wasn't like ready for that or whatever, but it didn't bother me as much, because most of that album is not harsh vocals. And the second song called Streams came on, and there's this really wonderful piano melody that opens the song, and it's really got this like it's got this like really playful tone, and the lyrics are kind of silly. It's talking about swimming through streams with fishes or whatever. It's such a jolly song, and they're doing all these cool stuff musically with the keyboards, and all the guitars are doing cool stuff as well. And it has this really, really, really catchy chorus, this really soaring chorus. And I was listening to this, and in my head I was like, I've never heard anything like this before. It was like the most amazing musical thing I'd ever heard. And so like I listened to that full album, and I fell in love with that album. And from there I went through the rest of the discography and fell in love with The Mountain and Visions as well. All that were in Restoration, their EP. And before you knew it, I heard that Affinity was coming out, which is their 4th album. And I was just so excited for that album to drop once I was super into Haken. So they're a band that was like really important to me, especially from the progressive metal side of things. And they were definitely my first like instance of harsh vocals as well. From Haken, I got into Beardfish, which is also one of my favorite bands, and Eric got me into that. I remember we were sitting in your car outside.
On the way home from running on Isle Palms.
On the way home from a run.
Yeah.
It was me, you, Miranda, who's one of our good friends, and Dylan as well. And we were sitting in a run, and what song was it? It was it
And the Stone Says?
Yeah, it was And the Stone Said If I Could Speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you played Tightrope as well, because it's the song that comes after.
And I remember I'd been trying to like get you to listen to them for like a long time. For like a while, and I was like, all right, I got him.
Yeah, and
I got him in my car.
We were listening to it, and I think Dylan and Miranda don't like the same music as we do.
Yeah.
They're not super into music in general, both of them. But I remember just like whatever conversation we had, I just like stopped it, and I was like, Eric, what are we listening to right now? This is really good, and I like this.
Yeah.
And from there, the next day, I think I went and listened to their album Mammoth, and then I just destroyed their entire discography and absolutely fell in love with them. As well. And another big step in my descent after Beardfish was getting into like heavier metal and harsh vocals, which is a thing like I was pretty adamant about that I didn't like for a really long time, and I didn't think it was something I could ever get into like you as well. I like respected it for what it was, but I just like for me personally, I didn't think it was for me. And I mean, Eric got into harsh vocals through Opeth, which is also how I got through it. And I've seen a lot of people on the internet who have this story of getting into harsh vocals through Opeth.
Yeah,
I think they're a really good starting point for that kind of thing, because there are the clean sections as well. And Michael Alkerfeld has got a gorgeous clean voice as well. But yeah, it took me a little while to get into the harsh vocals as well. But then through Opeth, I just like fell in love with his harsh vocals in particular, and that kind of like let me branch out to other harsh vocals. Now I absolutely love harsh vocals. And the last thing I want to say about my descent, I guess, is my favorite band currently is a band called Between the Buried and Me, which they're very popular in the prog scene. And I remember trying to listen to them after Opeth because I had heard great things. I knew they had a lot of harsh vocals, and I was like, I like Opeth, let's see if I like this. And it just wasn't for me at first. It was a little jarring. They're a little more sporadic and all over the place. And the vocals are definitely a different style as well too. And I just like couldn't get into it. I tried like their first 3 albums. I didn't even get to Colors, which I was like, I just don't think I like this. And then fast forward to 2000 and I guess it was 2017. Yeah.
Yeah, the end.
December,
towards the end.
December 2017. I hear again, everyone's just raving about them, and I was like, I gotta try again. And this time I didn't even listen to the first 3 again. I just went straight to Colors, and I was like, okay, I can see it a little bit. And I listened to the Parallax tour for that, and that's where it like really clicked with me. And since then, I've just been down the Between the Buried and Me listening rabbit hole. I just listen to them all the time. And they've actually become my favorite band, and the album Coma Ecliptic is one of my favorite albums of all time, as well as some of their other works. As well. So I think that's like how I really got into the genre, and it's really branched me out into other subgenres of metal as well, and just all sorts of types of music from there.
All right. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, talk a little bit about our descents. We're going to talk a little bit about what prog means to us, what the definition is, and I think it's important. The two us part is like very important of this, because I think prog is something that's difficult to define, and a lot of people, there's a lot of disagreement, right?
There is a lot of disagreement between like people in the prog. Like I get in arguments on Reddit all the time
about,
with people about what is prog music
and what isn't.
Like,
and and there's so many different ideas. Honestly, you have people who can't decide whether it's a genre itself or just like an adjective. There are people who still can't just describes like a music.
Yeah,
or whatever.
Exactly.
And I've seen all sorts of other things. Even just some debate on the internet. Like 2 things I'd like to talk about a little bit. Like a couple days ago, there's a band that I really like, and I think they're very progressive. And they're a band called Closure in Moscow, and they have an album called Pink Lemonade, right? And their first couple albums, like I wouldn't say are progressive, but Pink Lemonade is like definitely like a progressive album to me, by my definition, which is what I'll get into. But I was looking up, like, they're not on Prog Archives, which, I mean, I'm not, like, a person who cares that much if something's on Prog Archives that much, but, like, in the thread about why they weren't in Prog Archives, one of the, like, moderators said, like, oh, they sound too mainstream. And, like, they use that as, like, a reason why they're not, like, progressive. And that doesn't make any sense. Like, what, like, that's not, like, whether something sounds mainstream or popular, how popular something is doesn't make something prog or not. Like, that's dumb.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
It's, like, really dumb
and
to me.
To argue more against that point is that album's really, really weird.
Yeah, it's, like, not even that.
It's not accessible.
What are you
it's not
talking
accessible.
about?
I mean, there are some, like, accessible, like, hooks and stuff
Melodies,
like that, but, like, for the most part, it's a really strange album.
Yeah.
In the best way possible. But.
Yeah, and literally the guy's, like, reason why it is, like, it sounds too mainstream. It's like, what does that even, like, really mean? What is sounding like, I don't know.
Which, there's no such, I don't even know what that means, sounding mainstream.
Yeah, like, but it's just, like, pop or something.
Because progressive rock, when it first started, was mainstream.
Yeah, it was like, very popular.
Music, yeah.
I mean, Rush and, like, Yes, and then Genesis and those bands, like, they're pretty popular.
Yeah.
Like, especially they were back in the day.
And that's really the only time it's been, like, popular in the mainstream, I guess.
Yeah.
But, like, mainstream isn't a genre.
Yeah. And so that's one thing. And then the other thing is the other day I was on, a progressive rock forum, and people were talking about whether something was progressive or not. I remember this one a little less clearly because it wasn't as much of a thing. But they were talking about this one band, and they're like, oh, they can't be progressive because they don't have a keyboard. It's like, well, like what? That doesn't make any sense.
No,
that's like ridiculous. Like, so is your definition of prog like having a keyboard? That doesn't, like, so the point of all this is, like, people have all these different definitions of progressive and what it means to them. And again, some of them can't even decide whether it's the actual genre or like an adjective to describe something. And people have all these like weird like criteria that something has to be to like fit prog. So with all that said, my definition is something that is like a definition to me. I'm sure there are holes in it or whatever. I'm sure you can find examples that like don't fit or whatever. But for me, a definition of progressive music is music that uses instruments. That's an important thing to me.
That is an important.
Because we both are not fans of like programmed instruments.
Yeah.
And also
sort of
like
fake instrumentation at all. We do not enjoy.
Yeah, and just like stuff that's like. Just like all like,
any computer magic.
Yeah, like too much of that stuff. Yeah, we don't like that. To be the overwhelming like thing in an album, I mean, obviously like some bands use it as like flourishes every once in a while, like whatever. But like if your whole album is just like random computery stuff, that you did, it's like not to me progressive. But it's also, but my main definition is like music that changes a lot from like within a song and from song to song on an album. And between albums in a discography. And it could be like one of those things or all those things. So to me, that's what progressive music is.
Yeah, and I actually have the exact same definition, personally. We agree on that, very much so. And I think there's like there's some things you can say that like prog typically has.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean it's always true. And some of those things, to me are, the prog bands typically, or prog musicians typically blend multiple genres seamlessly together, and they typically, to me, don't adhere to any like musical contracts or current trends or whatever. They just kind of do what they want, and I think prog. It's derived from, in my opinion, avant-garde jazz and classical music, and I think they like combine elements of those two and just put it in more of a specifically progressive rock and progressive metal. They just put those ideas into a rock or metal setting.
Yeah.
And to me, prog is just as impressive as either of those things. I feel like the two I just said are often lauded as like big musical accomplishments, and I think this is very elitist of me, but I think prog is like right there with that kind of stuff as well.
People always talk online and like, oh, like this is cool and stuff, but it's not like jazz.
Yeah,
Whoa!
and
like,
I think jazz is cool. Man.
I love jazz. Yeah,
a lot of prog stuff I like has tons of jazz stuff in it, and jazz on its own I think is great.
Yeah,
but I don't think jazz is inherently better than
I don't think so.
prog music either. And I mean, it's all subjective anyways, but point is, I think it's just as impressive from a musicianship standpoint and like a writing standpoint. And oftentimes it features high levels of musicianship, non-traditional song structures and song lengths, use of non-traditional rock and metal instrumentation. There's a lot of like wonky musical ideas that are not like normal at all. Like you wouldn't hear like in popular music at all. Some of the stuff that goes on. There's a lot of weirdness whether that be musically or lyrical themes, odd time signatures, concept albums, stuff like that. And I think a lot of people have this idea about like, at least I've seen this on the internet a lot, about what like lyrical content has to be.
Yeah,
I think there's kind of a bad stereotype that Prog's lyrics have to be about like fantasy stuff always.
Yeah, that's
which I get, like a lot of classic prog bands like did do that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but like,
and obviously that's like fine too. Like I don't
I'm cool with that as well. But like I think a lot of people, when they think of like lyrical content, they think of like super nerdy like fantasy stuff, and I don't think that's always it at all. I mean, it's typically, for me, that's not it actually.
Yeah. In fact, like plenty of prog bands like write about like current issues and like things like that, and plenty of them write about like things that affect everyone, like emotions and like depression and things like that, and like plenty of them use like things like fantasy stories and things like that to say real world things.
Yeah,
and, like,
exactly.
Make real world points. And actually, one of my favorite bands, Beardfish, is a band that does that. They
all the time. Yeah,
tell quite a few like funny stories, but they always like have a point.
Yeah, and I think like people have this idea about what the lyrics in prog need to be about or are about, but for me, it's just anything and everything. I've heard everything from like prog bands talk about from a lyrical standpoint. So that's kind of it for me as well on like my definition. I think it's music that changes like throughout, like Eric said, like throughout a song, from song to song on an album, and throughout a band's discography. And when I say change, I mean like typically like big changes musically.
Right.
Yeah. It's not just like one. Yeah.
It's not like, this band like one time like did a thing.
Yeah, it's like, pretty noticeable. And it happens in the song a lot as well, which can be jarring to people when you first listen to it, because suddenly there could be like a very jazzy section, then suddenly there could be this like really, really metal section. Which I understand how that's jarring, and it is first jarring when you listen to it, but I think it takes intense listens to really like understand.
And you have to like listen to it thorough. And I also think like prog is a genre that it requires more effort from everyone, like from the musicians, obviously, and also from the listeners. Like most prog albums, like on your first listen, you're not gonna like it as much as you would on your like.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
I can't think of an album I like like on the first listen more than like maybe the third or fourth listen. It's always like that for me. And sometimes I straight up don't even like an album the first time I listen to it. Just or there's just like too much stuff too much ideas and stuff
even, like,
being
remember,
thrown at me to remember it, and then
it sticks.
you have to try again. Like and then eventually like it clicks or it doesn't click. But
basically, prog is a genre of music where if you played it at the club, people would turn their heads and go, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, everyone would leave.
Okay, so we've reached, the end, basically, of our first podcast. But before we go, we're going to each recommend you a song and talk about it a little bit. And we're going to do this every week, hopefully. Future segments are going to be a little different. Future episodes of the podcasts. We're going to probably talk more about like what we've been listening to and things like that, and then also a topic. And we're gonna like drone on for less long about things like our personal descents into prog. Not that that's not fun, but Anyways, so my song that I'm going to recommend for this time is a song called "Be Together" by a band called Bubble Math from the album "Such Fine Particles of the Universe." And that is a song that I really like. It has really funny lyrics that are also like a little creepy, and like they take a bit to really sink in. Like at first, like the first like couple lines like sound like a typical like love song kind of thing, like some guy like singing about like a girl he likes or whatever, but in a little bit of a weird way. But then like as the song goes on, you're like, oh, this is like really creepy, and it like becomes like I at least I think what it's about is like a fat like obese like stalker dude of some woman or whatever, and like it gets more and more aggressive basically throughout the song. It'll be like why can't we be together, and all this stuff. It's really weird, but I love it, and it's actually the band Bubble Math is a really good band, and I think they released an album, Such Fine Particles of the Universe, in 2001, and I think it was like super ahead of its time actually. I think like if it was released in 2019, no one would like be like, oh, this is out of place. And they actually released another album in 2017, which is different but good too. But I don't like it as much as the first one. But anyways, that's my song.
Nice. My song is a song by the band Gandalf's Fist, the English progressive rock band. And the song I picked from their latest album, The Clockwork Fable, is called The Lamplighter, parts 1 through 8. There are 3 verses of the song. This is the first part of the song, and this is a really good band and a really good song. Off their album Clockwork Fable, which is a 3-hour and 13-minute album. I think it's like one of the most ambitious progressive albums I've ever listened to, and it's one of my favorite albums of all time, actually. And this song's just a beautiful song. The instrumentation is amazing. The songwriting is amazing. The lyrics are good. It's a concept album, so if you like this song, I would definitely recommend checking out the rest of the album. It just has really lush instrumentation, flutes, strings, pianos, both male and female vocals that complement each other beautifully. And then there's just near the end of the song, the 13-minute mark, there's a 15 and a half minute song or so. There's just this absolutely like shreddy guitar solo that like you might think leading up to it sounds out of place, but it's just like it's so perfect. And Dean Marsh, the guitarist and main composer of the band, is a very, very underrated musician, I think, in the prog scene. And I think this band is still underrated. This album is received pretty well, but I just don't think they're getting enough attention in the prog world. So check out the song The Lamplighter, parts 1 through 8 by Gandalf's Fist. And that's the end of episode 1 of ProgPod. We plan on doing this, I think maybe bi-weekly or so to start, I guess. So we'll see you next time on ProgPod.